This guy is shirtless today, and welcome back to another
Alright, you also have some sort of toothpick in your mouth.
It's actually an incense.
An incense.
So it smells good.
It's smoking now.
It smells good to put in your
picking
mouth.
up the bad habits. And he's got the headband over the hat.
And today,
that's not a hat.
We're learning from Ekhart Tolle about narcissism.
Yes.
So we can both overcome this.
Okay. Let's
We're just hopping right in.
No, I just feel like there's no reason. You know who Ekhart Tolle is, and if you don't, you're about to find out.
Let's learn.
Oh, did we not even say it was learn with us?
No, it doesn't.
It's learn
We're
with
just
us.
learning.
Now, the ego, which is a mind-made sense of self,
That's
a
adorable.
mind-made identity, that consists of narratives, thoughts that you identify with.
So cute.
The earliest story about the rising of the ego is the myth of Narcissus. This is, of course, where the word narcissism comes from. And every ego has very strong narcissistic elements to it. The story of Narcissus is there was a young man, very beautiful, in ancient Greece. And this young man, because it was a time before mirrors were invented, and before we had the wonderful invention of selfies, he had never seen himself. And one day he looked into a pool of water and he saw his own reflection. And he was so fascinated by his own reflection. The story says that he fell in love with himself, but my interpretation is really that he became obsessed with himself, but not with himself, with the image of himself. And after that, he was no longer a happy person. There are various versions of that story, but his life didn't go well after that.
Dang.
That was some stuff.
That was some real stuff. That's a story that I think could be done in a proper way. Like, you could see a reflection of yourself and find your own beauty. Like, because you need to love yourself before you can love someone else. But if you are obsessed with this own beauty, or obsessed with how others are perceiving your own beauty, that can be so troubling. But I feel like you're gonna...
And I think that was the key to it, is that he said he didn't fall in love with himself.
Yes.
He fell in love with the image of
Yes.
himself.
Wow.
And the image of yourself is how you think other people are perceiving you. So when you're looking in the mirror, or you're reflecting on yourself, mirror, reflecting on just who you are, how you act.
Yeah.
If you're obsessed with that image, you're always going to find things to pick apart or poke at, and that's probably why, what's his name? Narcissism?
I don't know.
I forgot it. I forgot the guy's name.
The guy's name. You know who we're talking about.
This character.
Yeah.
That's probably why he was upset afterwards, because once you have this image of yourself, you begin to judge everything about yourself, and in order to judge yourself, you must also have people to put yourself against. So you are constantly judging others.
You're constantly in competition. Wow.
Good story.
Good
I like
story.
it.
Me too.
So that, I believe, there's sometimes very deep wisdom embodied in mythology, in myth. It really, what it points to is the arising of the human ego, which is a kind of phantom self that you carry around, that you mistake for who you actually are. It consists of identifications with possessions, identification with your own body, including, of course, the color of your skin. That's part of your own body. Identification with things that you can do, abilities, things you know. Now, what does it mean, identification with? It means you derive your sense of self from something that is not you. So let's say it's my car. And it could start for a little child who gets a toy car. And so the child is given a toy car, and that's the beginning of the ego, is the feeling of the child, this is mine. So there's a certain identification with the toy the self-identification. So it enhances, because it only works if another child does not have that toy, then it really works. This is my car. So it enhances a certain sense of identity. And identity is something that humans desperately seek after meeting the needs of food and shelter. One could almost say the next thing after that is the psychological need in human beings for a sense of identity.
That just made me think of ego in a totally different way, and brought me back to the idea that I keep coming back to of the importance of sharing in society, and how maybe these cycles of individualism and capitalism that we have right now are directly affecting the ego. Of course, like, if you were to say that to me, I'd be like, yeah, obviously, but I've just never thought of it in that way, of like the first time that you thought, this is mine, whether it's a thing or a thing that you think you are, it doesn't allow for your change to keep happening.
I think immediately when you identify with those external things, you also have something to lose. You know, life becomes a game of protection over, and of course, if you bring this toy car analogy to the image of ourselves, all of a sudden you have a person that you gotta be you know, you gotta be, and everything that happens is, in your perspective, building judgments on you and of your character. And if you want your character to be this certain thing that you identify with, then you have to consistently live up to this thing, even if what's really gonna make you satisfied in life is this thing over here.
Wow. So then you're just chasing that. And also that relates to your relationships with other people as well. I was just listening to a lecture with Ram Dass, and he said that he used to teach at Harvard. And then 15 years later, after this great spiritual awakening he came back and met with one of his colleagues and just like hung out with him for a while. And he said within 15 minutes, the colleague said, Ram Dass, you haven't changed a bit. And Ram Dass said, that's what this person thinks, because this person is only seeing a projection of what they think I am. They're not seeing me at all. They're literally looking at me and creating almost like a memory of what they are. Isn't that?
Oh, jeez.
Come on. Yeah.
And then the amount of imprisonment that is found in that way of thinking.
If you're creating identities with yourself and creating identities with everyone and everything you see around you too. Like if I were to see you every day and be like, philosophy major, that's how I could define you, I would look at you in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Which is so much more negative, because then it's like, that's unchanging.
Yeah, and even if the thing that you place them as isn't negative on its own.
Philosophy major is probably a good thing.
But then it's just gonna trap that person there.
Yes.
And it's not gonna trap that person there, it's gonna trap you there in your perspective of that person.
Yes. And also there can be the issue too of too many people defining one person as this one thing. And then that person feels like, oh, I guess I am that one thing.
Very nice.
Yeah,
that gets into some societal cycles.
Exactly.
That we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right,
that was a ride.
Yeah, that was a ride. Yeah.
The dog has no self-image. The animal does not yet have an ego, so the dog is itself. The dog has no problem with body image or self-esteem, because the dog is, and this is why most animals are more joyous and less problematic than humans. They do not carry the weight of the self, what the Buddha called the self. One of the main teachings of the Buddha is to recognize the unreality of the self, that it is a mental construct that you mistake for who you are. So ultimately, the ego, then the essence of ego, you could say, is complete identification with thoughts.
Oh,
Dude. That's some stuff that's big in my life at this moment. Like, we've been talking about this. Both of us have been going through these kind of rides of, like, feeling like we're finding a lot of new clarities in life.
Yes.
And then dropping down into, like, old habits of,
yes.
like, for me, potentially, like, being mean to people and pushing people away because I'm afraid of different stuff. But the thing that's been coming up throughout all of it was something I said to you last night, that the intellectual mind feels like it's just running computer programs.
Yes.
And the computer program just has, like, a replay button at the end of it. An auto replay. And it's like, you'll go through this whole computer program of, like, a series of thoughts. So you'll be like, I did something mean to my friend, justify why you did something mean to your friend, think about what the future situation could be between you or your friend, and then feel the emotions of being sad because of all that.
Yeah.
And then restart back to the top. And it's been great because that has been on my mind these last few days.
Yeah.
And I'll continuously be like, whoa, this is just a computer program running, pause it, come back into myself, you know, and then I'll be like, I'll feel good for a few minutes and be like, yeah, I'm not that chain of thoughts. 3 minutes later, I find myself, like, staring off into the distance, catch myself in the computer program again.
Dang.
And it's like, I can now see what's, with that example, I can see what he means by having a full realization that you are not those thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, that you are not that emotion that's on this repeat cycle.
And what's been helping me, just for a bit of practical advice that I've been given, is that this has been a very recent thing that I've been doing. Whenever I find myself in my thoughts or traveling up into my thoughts, because the earlier you can catch it, the easier it is to escape it and be free from it. I don't know if this is healthy for everyone, probably isn't, but for me it really works. I do a full body scan. I'm like, hey, how are my hands feeling? Eckhart says something, a good practice is to lay your hands still and find out how you can know that they're there. Because you can feel a vibration in your hands. How does my heart feel? How does my gut feel? How does my body feel? Very often feels really good.
Yeah.
And then it's like, once I've done that whole scan, then I'm just focused on my body. And then those thoughts have already just ceased.
They pass.
A decent amount of time. They just pass, exactly.
And then they come back and it's a reset of that process.
Yeah.
But I think the more that you also feel the fact that you are not the thoughts, you know, the more real you make that. Because it's easy to say, like, oh yeah, I'm not my ego, I'm not this image, I'm not those thoughts or emotions. It's harder to put it into action.
Yeah.
And the more you feel it is what's going to give you that real, like, because, you know, it's coming from all of you first. And when all of you is identified with this, and the more space you make between all of you and this, the more you're probably immediately going to be in a state like Eckhart.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh,
exactly.
Thoughts.
Buddhists also say, I've heard multiple times, and I just first practiced it like yesterday and then this morning, the practice of things coming up, and when you recognize that they're there, the first instinct is to just squash them. But what I've been doing, only because I've heard it, is say out loud, like, hello, jealousy. Nice to see you again. Welcome. And it passes. But it'll stay around if you're like, no, I don't feel jealous right now. Like,
Nah. Me? My self-image? No, I'm jealous.
Perfect. I'm awakened. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Back into it?
Right back into it.
The awakening can begin with realizing that you are not the thoughts that go through your mind. That's the beginning. Now, what has arisen at that moment? awareness. Suddenly you realize that there is a dimension of consciousness in you that's not thinking, but just conscious. And that is your essence identity. To be rooted in that, it's ultimately very simple. I don't know why they don't teach that at school. I mean, the most important life lesson is the transcendent dimension of life, of who you are. To find all the ancient teachings using different terms and different words, they all point to this possibility of realizing the transcendent dimension of who you are. Whether the Buddha calls it, the Buddha actually calls it, the translation is sunyata, emptiness, but the better translation would be spaciousness. That's the essence of who you are, sunyata, spaciousness. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven, which in my translation is not, I translated kingdom, I translated as dimension, and heaven, which is the vast heaven. When you look up at the sky, that's the closest thing you can get to spaciousness in the sense-perceived world. The closest thing you can get to spaciousness is you look at the vastness of the sky or heaven. In many languages, heaven and sky is the same word. So you look at the vastness of the sky, which is vast spaciousness. So the kingdom of heaven is the dimension of spaciousness. It's a dimension of consciousness. This is why then they asked Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? When is it going to come? And he said, the kingdom of heaven cannot come with signs to be perceived. You can never say it's over here or it's over there, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. In fact, he was saying that it is the essence of who you are. Consciousness is, but it's not only the essence of who you are, it's the essence of the universe itself, because you are just a microcosm of the universe. So when you realize the essence of who you are, the universe is realizing its own essence through you, this little thing, through you.
That quote as well.
You're not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop.
Come on. What more is there to say?
Yeah, I feel like Ekhart brought it home on that one.
Wow.
I've read a lot of Buddhism and always heard emptiness. I like spaciousness.
Love spaciousness. Kingdom of heaven. Eckhart's like, my translation is the dimension of heaven.
The dimension of spaciousness.
Whoa.
And
then when you get back to we don't need to talk about science, but if we're talking about science, realizing that most of physical matter is empty space. Not just most.
It's like 99.9999, whatever.
This
like
is most
atoms
empty
are
space. Find the spaciousness. What connects it? Oh my gosh, that was so good.
That was very good.
That was so good. That's just...
Do you guys have thoughts we want to hear?
Ekhart being Ekhart. Yeah.
That was one of the best Ekhart runs I've heard.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah, that was very concise as well. Nice.
All right, friends.
Okay.
As always.
Much love.
Much love.